Hi guys, welcome back to OCD Real Talk. We're here with Gemma after quite a while, and Harley is here with his second Real Talk. Hi Harley, thanks for joining us. Gemma,
No
thanks
problem.
for joining us as well and treating us with your gracious presence
Your
that
aura.
you otherwise don't
Your
give us.
aura.
Yes.
Me and my Christmas
Um,
jumper.
yes, you deprive us of usually. We are your beggars. But today we wanted to talk about. We thought talking about intrusive urges would be a good thing to touch upon. Again, last week we did like an Xmas kind of themed video, and so going into kind of like taking off from that, intrusive urges would be a good topic to discuss because around the holiday season, when you're around so much family or loved ones, or when the pressure to enjoy and have a good time is a lot, intrusive urges can feel very intrusive and quite intense. Um, Hardy and Gemma, I think we should start with you guys. Um, Hardy, like, what has been your experience with intrusive urges? Have you had intrusive urges in the past or not? And what was your go-to way of dealing with them?
So yes, I have had intrusive urges, specifically with POCD. Um, and it it when that started happening, at first with my POCD, it was mainly just the images, and then when the urges started happening, it was like, oh my God, this is it, this is real, this proves that it's real. Like if I'm having like these urges and these feelings, like I thought I thought it was just intrusive thoughts, like what's going on? And then yeah, so I've had that, and I think for me it was worse than just having the images, because like I said, it feels very real and very scary, and especially when you don't know how to deal with it. And the way that I cope with it, and I think a lot of other people probably do the same as me, I just allow it to happen the same way as the images or the thoughts that I have, and I just bring it along for the ride as well as the thoughts. And I don't necessarily, I try, and it's something that I still struggle with now, is like disputing it, because like it starts to go into like maybe like a self-reassurance kind of way, kind of form. And
Mhm.
so yeah, I still I'm trying to dispute in the correct way. But yeah, I always try and bring it for the ride. I always try and feel the uncomfortableness, because that's the way I've dealt with the images in the past, and it's helped a lot. So I think tackling the it urges the same way is the right way to go for me anyway.
Awesome.
And I think like one thing important thing to highlight over here with people watching as well is that when we talk about disputing, we don't like hardly, I'm sure you know this, but I'm just like clarifying it for people who are
Mhm.
watching, is that
Yeah.
like when you're talking about intrusive urges and disputing intrusive urges, we don't dispute like intrusive urges themselves,
Mhm.
because we cannot, that's not what we dispute. What we dispute is the fears and beliefs that are going behind them, which
Yeah.
are essentially, my body must not behave this way. I must not feel this way. This must not be true. Out of
Mhm.
all human beings on this earth, this must not be true for me specifically. Somebody else, sure, but not for me, kind of thing. So
Mhm.
you dispute the fear and the like irrational beliefs that are underlying whatever we are experiencing. So um yeah, Gemma, what about you? Like, what? How do you think that? What are? Do you think there are some misconceptions around intrusive urges, or what mistakes do you think people make when they're dealing with intrusive urges?
So I think for me, urges was the final thing to come. So I think I got under the thoughts. I started to go, okay, I can accept this. This is okay. Um, then the kind of images and sensations would come. That took a long time to get through. And then when I finally thought I was under all that, the urges came last, probably as the kind of most intense thing that would come in. So I think the thing that people commonly do with urges is that's the point where they go, this is real now. I actually feel like I want to do it. This is real. Um, so I think just remembering that you need to treat it the same as all of the other things. Just because it's an urge now and not a thought or an image, it doesn't mean you need to change the way you're dealing with it. You still need to continue, allow it to be there and break down the fears behind it.
Awesome.
It's interesting. So I've never had intrusive urges except for one singular moment, and it's very interesting because I remember I went into the kitchen at like 1 a.m. at night, as I do. I don't know, I went to get something or whatever.
You're always up all night.
Let's not go there. Right now it's like almost midnight, and I'll be up for another 2 hours probably. But
Wow.
and I have work in the morning. But I was in the kitchen, and there was a distinct feeling, a very distinct feeling, where I felt like I would open a drawer, take out a knife, and stab myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the only one time that I ever had in, and it came randomly. I've never had any harm OCD themes. I've never had like intrusive urges with harm or self harm even, or any of those things. But like that was one moment, and and this is back when I was obviously suffering very much from OCD, and I ran out of the kitchen because I thought that it meant I was going to do something to myself if I actually stayed there. That something would take over me, and I would feel completely confident and I would have no remorse in doing that to myself. It felt that palpable.
The
Um,
urges with harm for me was probably the most intense the urges have been. So things, as you say, like picking up a knife, automatically thinking you want to stab yourself. I used to get it a lot when driving as well. So I would really get the urge to just steer the wheel. And sometimes I would feel my hand slightly flicker as though I was going to do it because it was that intense.
yeah.
So yeah, the
Crazy.
urges were definitely
Nick,
with every theme I had, they were like the last
speaking of,
bit. No, sorry, carry on.
yeah, sorry, Gemma. I thought you were done, and I think there was a lag, and then I started to speak, and I mean, technology getting in the way. It wasn't my fault. I promise I'm a polite person. But Nick, speaking of driving, I was actually just thinking of this, and it's interesting Gemma mentioned this. So in a lot of your videos, you have talked about like road rage, like being so just like absolute, like seeing red when you're on the road. I haven't. I know you've had intrusive sensations because sensory motor has been your primary theme. But have you ever had intrusive urges where you felt like you were out of anger or something? You were going to act on your anger or do something to them, unless you actually acted on your anger. That's a separate story.
Well, I have. I've done both. I have acted out on the anger before. Thankfully, not a lot of fights in college, but definitely holes in my wall, breaking things in my house. I mean, I literally have a 100-pound punching bag in my basement. One time I literally just took it off the hinges when I was really angry and picked it up and slammed it and picked it up and slammed it. Erica was messaging Rob, I think, and she's like, Nick's in the basement, like absolutely going insane. And then I think I came back upstairs and I said something like, I'm good now. She's like, no, you're not.
But did you feel like, I mean, I think, was it that intrusive urge of what if I do something worse?
So I wasn't afraid. So mine manifested different. So with Gemma, mine wasn't a fear of like, oh my gosh, I'm going to do this urge and it feels like it's so. Me, it was like, it never was like there was never like almost like a guilt aspect to it. Like the urge was, it just felt like I need to make a change. Like that's where my urges were like, oh, okay, this isn't working. Read the book again. Like the urge to read the book again. Or with my body dysmorphia, because my main compulsion was changing my calories and changing my workout program, it would be like, I'd wake up one morning and I would just be like, something is wrong with my workout. I need to make it. And that urge, like it's an urgency. And I would like go online and like write a whole new program. And then as soon as I wrote it, I'd be like, oh, like I feel so much better. So mine was an urge, but different. It wasn't like Gemma or like you guys have said, like, oh my God, I feel like I'm going to hurt someone. But the anger one, I mean, whether it's genetic or not, I mean, there are still times where I have to literally say to myself, Nick, you have to just sit with this anger sensation, because that was a very difficult one for me. As I always say in the webinars, Moment has gotten the back end stick of that sometimes. So and so is Rob, and so has Erica. Erica's gotten like thousands of times of me, like just
the Holy Trinity.
the Holy Trinity,
Rob,
exactly. Like, I'll give you an example. I was working with a girl about 2 hours ago, and she said to me, you know, my biggest trigger is my mom and my family. And then she yells and gives a lot of attitude. I said, well, you have to learn to sit with the anger, because what most people do is what you said, Gemma. They say this, well, I could sit with anxiety, but anger is different. Like, that means something, right? Oh, but it's not. Like, the only difference between anger and anxiety is the way it feels, but you still don't like either one. You know, that's all it is. So yeah,
and I think technically, I think maybe all OCD sufferers do suffer from intrusive urges. Like, we usually associate intrusive urges with just harm OCD, POCD, whatever other kind of like age OCD. What if I, like, you know, make a move on the same sex or something like that? But or even like I would say even with trans OCD, if people are like, what if I get the urge to go into surgery for gender reassignment or something like that? But I feel like people doing compulsions, that, like, and especially when you're trying to stop compulsions, that urge to do compulsions is also very intrusive.
Yeah.
That urge to be like, no, that you must do this, or like that you need to do this, or
It feels life or death.
and
You have to do
like
it.
constantly be like, no.
Well, I think Moment, you just made a
Exactly.
terrific point. Like, anytime any of us perform a compulsion or performed a compulsion, it's happening because we had an urge to perform a compulsion. You know, Harley wasn't triggered, and Harley didn't go, yeah, I'm going to make a conscious decision to do a compulsion right now. Like, it was like the urge. It was almost like you're a caveman. You're like, oh, compulsion. Like, you know, just like the urge is just there. I don't think it's so.
It's almost
funny.
like.
Go ahead.
Sorry, now I don't mean to cut. It's almost when you do like those compulsions. It's almost like it's almost like human nature to do that. It's almost like automatic, and it's almost, and you're just it's like an urge. I think everyone who has OCD has an urge to get relief. So that's an urge in itself, like to find short temporary relief. And at the time, you don't know that. Sorry,
that's a great point, Harley.
And I think like one thing to specifically highlight is also that, I mean, the urge to do compulsions, that is also intrusive, but also the urge to harm OCD and POCD is like different in the sense, because that relates to a different kind of fear. Because it's like, what if I do this? So with compulsions, people don't think, oh, what if I do this, unless they have a fear of not recovering. So then it's like, oh, what if I end up doing compulsions? So then they have that kind of thing. So it's kind of like slightly different, but it feels pretty much the same way.
And it's crazy too with the urge, because it's so convincing, like you said, Harley. It's almost like an animalistic biological tendency that I think the hardest thing, and you two would both see this, like Harley and Gemma, if you were on and saw all the calls like me and Momenters doing with people, I think it's so difficult for the person to accept that those urges are going to be there for a while. Like, they're not going away next month, you know? And I think that's what's hard, because when we're suffering, time almost like slows down because you're suffering so badly. So every moment you're like, holy crap. So, you know, you can. Rob did it with me, probably because he can understand my personality right away. You know, he comes on the first call and he says, what if I told you I think you heard me say this, Gemma. What if I told you you're going to suffer for the next 3 years? I'm like, what did you just say to me? But the truth is, there was some merit in that statement. Like, there really was some merit in that. Even when I felt recovered at my 1 year recovery video, I look back on that person now and I watch some of my older videos. Moment, remember the video the other day? I made a video. I was a little bit hyped up. Moment watched it. Moment was like, ooh, yeah, you dropped the F word, but you dropped it like really hard. And I was like, yeah, you know what? You're right. When I go back and watch my videos from 18 months ago, I'm like, I would not even, and none of that would how I sound now. Like it was like aggressive, like black and white. This is what it was. Moment.
So Harley, like, I also wanted to like ask you about this thing. So because you had intrusive urges and not just intrusive images and thoughts, but like also urges. Obviously, when it comes to opening up about the OCD, it takes a great deal of like um courage and like confidence to even like bring those words in front of somebody else. But when because I'm just curious to know the POCD experience a little bit as well. So when you told like somebody in your life about it, um, did you tell about every single aspect of it, or was it like just tell about the thoughts and not the urges? Because what if they think the urges means it's real or something?
Yeah, so I mainly spoke to like people that I trusted in, like mainly about the thoughts. I never really spoke about the urges because, like you said, I wasn't really sure about how they were going to react to it. I think
Mm,
it's a very hard topic to talk about, really.
mm,
But yeah, yeah, it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of, you don't really know, you hold back a lot because you don't really know what to expect from the other person. Whereas I feel like with talking about the thoughts, I don't know, there's something about it that just seems a bit easier
Well,
than
it's
the
like the
yeah.
urges.
sensory motor, right? Like Moments heard me talk about this. I could literally write on a T-shirt, "I'm afraid of noticing my saliva forever," and walk down New York City, and people would just be like, "What's wrong with that guy?"
Yeah.
If
Mm.
you wrote
And
down your POCD fears and walked down a
mm,
street, you would be tackled because that's just
yeah,
Mm.
how people think.
because the other thing is
Yeah.
also, I think with intrusive urges, I think it kind of also correlates to this entire discourse around that if your body is reacting a certain way, then your body is trying to tell you something, or that your
Mm.
body is trying to I don't know, reveal something to you. And so there's a lot of like conversation in mental health around that, and there is merit to that. But like when it comes to OCD specifically, and when it comes to intrusive sensations and urges, then like it you kind of have to look at it from a very different perspective. And I think that that's why there is that um intense fear of like, what if these intrusive urges are trying to give me some kind of message? What if they're trying to
Mm.
tell me something? What if my body is indicating something to me? If my body is
Mhm.
reacting a certain way, then it must mean something. And that's like, again, for me as well, I think when I start to have nocturnal emissions, because it's not something that's in your control, I thought it was something wrong with me. And
Yeah.
I thought that it indicated some kind of perversion, or like some kind of juvenile delinquency or something like that about me, because
Mm.
it wasn't something in my control. So my body was acting in relation to reality. Of course, when I realized that all boys and men go through that, I was like, okay, sure.
I love that's my favorite thing when Mama goes, "Okay, sure."
Okay, yeah.
I have a good following question for this, talking about intrusive sensations, because I think this is something that's missed a lot, and people just kind of think it's just health OCD. So I'll start with you, Gemma. When you were really anxious, like lots of anxiety, panic, what were the type of intrusive sensations you got from, like, did you have like more heart palpitations? Do you have headache and like neck tension? Like, what were the symptoms you had with that?
I had a lot of sensations. When I first had OCD, years and years ago, when I was about 16, is when it got really bad. And then I had kind of a lull in between before it hit again. Um, but I didn't have so many sensations the first time, unless I just don't remember that part as much. But this time round, the sensations were really impressive. So
Impressive.
that's my perception now. I'm like, wow, how does your body do that? That was actually really impressive. So the dissociation for me was the biggest thing. So I was constantly walking around with tunnel vision, like everything was blurred. I was constantly dizzy. Constantly sweaty palms, constantly heart palpitations. When I was laying down at night, I would feel like I would close my eyes and I would feel my head start to like spin. Then I would become scared of that sensation and that would get worse. And it would get to the point where I just sit up and go, I can't even lay down because I can't handle the spinning. So yeah, I did experience quite a lot of sensations. And I think with sensations, there is nothing we can do about them. It is very much a case of once the core fear is brought down, the sensations will slowly come down as it happens. But yeah, I think not being afraid of the sensations was big for me. So instead of every time I had a sensation, I would usually like kind of lurch up and like try and sit straight and try and not pay attention to it. But once I actually started to allow myself, I think the Claire Weeks book was really good for that, and the Paul David one as well. So once I started to allow myself to feel the sensations, I'd feel my head start to spin and I'd go, okay, let's go for it. I'd close my eyes and I'd allow it to happen for a while, and eventually it would die down on its own. Which I didn't think it would. I thought if I close my eyes now, my head will spin forever. But if you do allow it to happen, it will slowly subside on its own. And yeah, it took me a long time to allow it to happen in that way.
That's amazing. Real quick, Harley, what about you? What do you think on that regard?
It's been a while since I had like really bad like anxiety, but from what I remember for some reason anxiety would, when I first experienced anxiety, it was like I'd have this feeling of like restlessness, like I couldn't stay still. Like I'd always be like moving a lot. Like if I was sitting in a chair, I'd always be like moving, and I'd always have like a feeling of like, you know, that feeling you get in your throat when you feel like you're about to be sick. But like I was
I had
having
that
that a
all
lot.
the time, Harley.
Yeah.
All the time.
And I had heart palpitations a lot, and the other symptom that I used to get as well, like my lips would get like extremely dry, like really dry. But yeah, that's the only symptoms I remember, and I feel like a lot of breathlessness as well, especially when I was trying to sleep. I probably had a lot more. I just can't remember on the top of my head. It's been a while, but they're the main ones that I remember. Yeah.
How long were you anxious for, Harley? Like how long were you in that state for?
Oh God, a while, a lot, too long, too long.
Too long.
Too long.
I think it's really because when I hear people talk about like anxiety symptoms they get, it's only then I realize that, oh, maybe I also had that. Even sometimes in real talk when we are discussing things, it's like, oh, I had that as well. But the reason that's not the main thing I ever talk about, or it's not the like highlight for me that comes to mind, is because I never cared. And it's so interesting because it's only when you care that you remember those things. But I was like, because again, in retrospect now, I realize that I was experiencing depersonalization and derealization part. I was like, okay, I mean, sure. The other day I was explaining something to someone on a call that, oh, I because they were having like not intrusive, sorry, they were having anxiety physical symptoms, and I said, oh, sometimes I get this in my leg when I'm sleeping at night. I get this kind of strange feeling, and then and then I like exercise a little bit, and then I'm able to sleep, because otherwise it's that agitation in my legs. And Rob was like, that is restless leg syndrome. It's called. And I was like, oh, okay. I mean,
I
whatever.
get that. Yeah.
So I would just get jolted awake. That was it never affected like my sleep with OCD was just like I don't know how you guys were with this, but I didn't even need an alarm clock. I would like wake up to panic. It would be like boom, boom, and I would like jump out of bed and be like, okay, it's good. I'm going to the gym. And I would take pre-workout, 300 milligrams of caffeine on top of being in a panic attack. And I'd be like driving to the gym at like 5 in the morning, like totally freaking out.
Oh, I was
think
the
sometimes,
opposite. I couldn't wake up in the morning. I really, really struggled with waking up in the
oh,
morning. But I
Crazy.
was
I
taking a lot of
never had that.
medication, so I
and
think maybe that contributed.
no, but it was for me as well because I was constantly fatigued and exhausted with anxiety. I would not want to get out of bed. Like I would cling for those 2 extra minutes before the snooze hit again. It was like no, I need this. But I think one important thing, because it links to intrusive urges as well, that I want to highlight is also that I think what people also often think is that they will only be able to let go of caring about it, or they will only be able to accept them once they stop caring about them. So, like, I think the misconception is that once you stop caring about them first, then when they happen, you will feel okay with it, and then you
Hmm.
can start to accept. But like Gemma, I think it's an important thing that you highlighted there, where you let yourself feel dizzy, and as a result of that experience, in fact, in that moment when you open yourself up to that experience, is when you start to not care,
It's like an
not before it has
exposure.
happened.
You're letting
Yeah,
that happen and letting it.
exactly. So it happens in the moment. So for in order to not care, you have to experience it to not care. You get what I mean? So
Mm.
it's
You
kind
have to
of
go
like
through
a,
the growing period. It's like you have to go through the growing pains to be able to get to that
absolutely.
Yeah.
perspective.
If it just stopped point blank one day, you'd always be scared of it coming back because you never
Yes,
learned to become comfortable with it. You need to become comfortable with it being there
I cannot
before.
Mm.
tell you how accurate that is for sensory motor. Like it is like you imagine in your head. This is what every sensory motor. Let me tell you guys, because I get all those calls. They say this to me. Hi, Nick. Yes. I never want to notice my breathing again. Ever. Never. Not one time. I say, okay, well, okay. Do you want to go to the gym? They're like, yes. Well, then that's not going to happen because you're going to be at the gym and you're going to be exercising and all these other things. But it's so funny because that's how I was. That's how intrusive the sensations feel. It's so interesting how it works. But you know what's crazy? I have a friend of mine. I just came from her house, and she has really bad POCD. She developed it in her 40s after an odd thing, like late 40s. And she just kind of disappeared. And she, if she watches this, she'll know who she is. And I just knew something was off, like the behaviors with those type of
Mm.
fears. It must be really scary because the four of us are where we are. We kind of forget what it's like to
Mm.
be in the thick of it. How scary it must be for someone the first time they have a true intrusive urge. Like you look at a family member and you have an intrusive urge and you have no idea what that is. You know, if you
Mm.
have that
Yeah.
now, like Jem and Harley, you guys are like, if you had the worst relapse ever, you would still be like, okay, like I know what to do, instead of
Yeah.
like,
You have it in the back of your mind. You know what it is. You know what OCD is doing. Whereas someone
yes.
who, if it comes out of nowhere for someone, they're like, oh my god, what is going on? That's how I felt
Did you have
when it
OCD
first
really
started.
young, Harley? Did it hit you at a very young age?
Yeah, like I had it when I was, for as long as I can remember, but it started off with magical thinking, and then it
Mm.
just progressed from magical thinking to false memory to then POCD. So yeah, I've had quite a few themes, but yeah, it started off with magical thinking. But even from a
Nick,
little age, like I had no idea what it was.
when you say when you were very young, that means hardly right now, basically.
Yeah,
Um,
Harley, how old are you? Oh,
I'm 26.
okay, you're not that young. You're not that
Nope.
young. And Gemma, what are you? 20, 28, Gemma?
28.
And
28.
oh,
Moment.
I'm 28. I'll be 29 in Feb.
God, we got Rob, that old son of a gun, man. What is he, 37?
94. I'm 94 born. I think yeah, Rob is
80,
36 or something. I
86?
don't
Yeah,
know.
I'm 89. I just made it. November 28th, 89. But no, I
Well, might
know
be
Nice.
189.
Moment's got a call here soon, and so do I. I just
Yeah.
want to say thank you, both of you, Gemma and Harley. It's always nice. The reason why I think why the Real Talks work so well, not only do I love to not shut my mouth, is because Harley's moment. Because
We didn't know.
it brings people together and it makes us laugh. And I think when a software finds this, like right now, there could be someone that watches the two of you, Harley and Gemma, and they think in their mind, how are they laughing right now? Like, how do they have joy in their life? You know, because I'm sure you two know what that feels like. So yeah,
100%.
I appreciate all three of you. That was a great call.
And sorry for me being, because I'm also a talker. If somebody says something, I'm like, I want to say something in response. So I end up like interrupting a bit as well. So that's just me, but I'll try to work on that.
New Jersey people, like around me and my friends, it's like if there's 5 of us, it's like, who can bring the tone of their voice above the other person? And you just are like, then you're just like the thing you sent me, Harley. You're like, hey, how you doing? Yelling at each other. Oh yeah, that was a lot.
But guys, this was really, really great. Again, it's always fun to just try a new dynamic with new people, a new mix of like people in the call, and it's always nice to have different kinds of insights. And who would have thought like Gemma and Hardy, like we would have like a common ground in terms of like this topic to discuss and share a lot of wisdom. But thank you for being here. And we will see you guys on another call very soon.
Awesome.
Happy
Good holidays,
holidays.
everyone. Merry
Thank
Christmas.
you.
Yeah, have a good Christmas,
Bye.
guys.
Bye.
See ya.